Hello guys, welcome to today's lesson. This lesson is part of our series on mass communication theories, and a very popular one of those, the agenda setting theory, is our focus. This theory was propounded by Dr. Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw. So let's get to know what the theory is all about. So the agenda setting theory has that the media influence how we see reality by their choice of newsworthy materials and how much prominence to give them. This means that the media influence how we perceive reality. Reality here has to do with the things that happen every day, the news materials that happen every day, the news relating to sports, economics, politics, fashion, entertainment. That's the reality. That's what happens every day. So the media do not just report these events as they are. They influence how we see these events by trying to filter or select some of these events or reality, and they frame it in a certain way that will influence how we view these events. So that's what the theory is all about. Now, this theory was developed in 1972 by Maxwell, McCombs, and Donald Shaw. So in their study that they called the Chapel Hill study, this study was conducted during the 1968 general elections in the US. So these researchers were trying to find out how people are influenced by the media. So they asked about 100 of Chapel Hill residents what they thought was important with regards to the elections. And they were able to establish a strong correlation between what the residents were seeing as important to what the media was actually reporting on their screens. So they were able to establish that what people deem as important is mostly what the media report to them. So that's how the theory came about. This theory also suggests that the topic and issues that the media always present to the public are the same issues that the people consider as important. This is to say that the media does not influence us by telling us what to think. They do not tell you to think about politics. The media do not tell you to think about corruption, but instead they influence your thoughts on these events by how they keep on emphasizing on these topics. So the more the media keeps on reporting on corruption, your attention will go to the fact that corruption is the dominant issue in the nation. So the continuous reportage of certain issues or events by the media outlets is going to influence what we see as important news materials. So there are two assumptions under the agenda setting theory. These are the assumptions. The first assumption is that the media controls reality. This is to say that, as I earlier on emphasized on, reality has to do with the things that happen every day. And we've segmented these things into different categories. We have politics, sports, economics, what have you. This is the reality. So the media do not just present reality as it is. They don't tell us everything that happens. They control it by giving us some of it and not everything. So at the end of the day, There are a lot of things that happen in finance, a lot of things happen in sports, a lot of things happen in the entertainment industry. But the media do not tell us everything. They analyze and filter some of these events that they think will be of relevance to their audience, and then they report on these events. So they don't report everything. They filter it. They think that this one is chunk. Well, Ghanaians don't need to know about the Olympic Games, so we are not going to talk about it. And if they think that Ghanaians need to know about politics, what is happening in parliament, they filter these events and they report to us on it. So that's the first assumption. The media controls reality. They don't give us everything, but rather they control what they think we have to see. The second assumption is that the media gives topics importance. So for the first stage, the media will select some of the topics that they think is important. By doing that, they control reality. And the second stage is that the media give topics importance. So as they've selected politics, now the number of time that they spend talking about these issues in their coverage is going to give these issues more importance. So for instance, you take a TV channel that is having a coverage on a news coverage. Let's say a 1 hour news coverage. Within that 1 hour, you realize that they will segment 15 minutes, or they will allocate 15 minutes for sports, and maybe, for all you know, more than 30 minutes on current affairs. Now, this is what we see. The more the media is telling us, is spending more time on current affairs, these issues become more important to us. So if the media is having a news coverage, a 1 hour news coverage, and they are spending about 45 minutes on current affairs, basically politics, and they use the rest of the 15 minutes to wrap up sports, entertainment, fashion, you can see that our perception will not be drawn to sports being so relevant to our daily lives. Our attention will be drawn to the fact that politics is more important. So media give topics importance, meaning that the more they focus, the number of time that they spend discussing about these issues, how the frontline headlines of magazines and newspapers are all trying to depict politics as their headlines, is going to give politics more importance. So these are the assumptions. The first assumption is media controls reality. They filter some news items that they think is of importance to the general public. And the second one is that now that they have chosen some of it, the number of time that they spend on each news material is going to give it more importance. To understand this better, we can use this simple model. As you can see from the model, we have reality, and we've earlier on emphasized on reality as what actually happens every day, which we've segmented or we've categorized as politics, entertainment, sports, fashion, finance, and so on. So that's the reality. That's what happens. Now, the media will select these events or the reality. They will select some of it. This is how they set the agenda. They select some of it. They omit some of it. So they will take some of this reality. They will not take some of them because they think it's not of importance. Then they will now frame these stories. Now, this is how they frame the stories, by how the tonation that they use, if it has to be a radio or a TV coverage, or the choice of words, if it has to be a newspaper or magazine or social media. So they frame the stories, how the manner in which they narrate these stories is going to have an impact on public perception. So as you can see, there's the reality, then the media will alterate the reality to influence our perception of what reality is. So let's take for an example. The reality is, let's take that this is what happened. Let's say an armed robber goes into a shop and he points the gun to the the guy at the counter. He collects all the money and he runs away. The police come in and they were able to trace him because there were cameras that captured everything that happened. So they were able to trace him, his car number and all that. Now, how the various media outlets report this reality. This is what actually happened. But you will see that how the various media channels report it will not be the same. So if a TV station take this reality, they will narrate it in a different manner that will have a certain perception on people or their audience. Whereas another media channel might not even report on this reality because they think robbery in a shop is not that important. Or even if they will report on this scenario, they will also frame it in a different way. Now, how these media outlets will frame it will have an impact on how you view armed robbery in a shop. So if one media channel reports that the police are able to trace an armed robber that stole from a shop, your perception will be that, oh, okay, the security system is working. But if another media channel reports that danger everywhere, robbery everywhere, no one is safe in a shop, well, the perception you need to create is that I'm sure when you are going to the shop, you even be afraid because you think that, oh, now this is the norm, you are not even safe. So how these events are narrated is going to have a change on your perception of reality. Now let's look at the levels of agenda setting. The media sets the agenda in two levels. We have the first level agenda setting and the second level agenda setting. For the first level agenda setting, the media outlets select reality that we've already talked about. They filter events that happen every day and they pick some of them and they talk about it. So that's the first level. Then the second level is they present these events in a manner that is going to have an impact on or an influence on how we see these events. So how the media is going to talk about these events is going to have an impact on how we view these events. For us to understand better, let's take a look at this example. This is a news magazine, the Newsweek, from the 1980s. Now, you can see the headline, Murder in the Air. This is what actually happened. So for this incident that is headlined on Newsweek, the Soviet Union mistakenly shot down a civilian aircraft because they thought it was a jet fighter that was coming to attack them. So they shot it down. And unfortunately, about 190 people on board all lost their lives. So as you can see, this is how Newsweek headlined the incident, Murder in the Air, trying to create an impression that the civilian aircraft was actually targeted and all the people on board were killed. So that's one scenario. Now we look at the second scenario. This is the same Newsweek magazine. A few years later, another incident happened very similar to the first one. Now, for this second scenario, the US shot down a civilian aircraft or an Iranian civilian aircraft. They were also mistaken for a jet fighter, funny enough. And this is how they headlined it, why it happened. Trying to justify why the US did it, because it's the US, so we are trying to justify why they did it. Now, what we can see from this scenario, from the same news outlet, Newsweek, is that it's a typical agenda setting scenario, and they are trying to influence public perception of the same incident that occurred. For the first incident, because the US didn't do it, and it was the Soviet Union, and the US is not in good terms with the Soviet Union. They were trying to annihilate the Soviet Union by saying that they murdered the aircraft. Another scenario, the same incident, and they are telling us that why it happened. So this is a typical example of agenda setting, where we can see that the media influence how we think about reality by how they frame their stories. So for the first one, when you read the headline, I'm sure you might be thinking that, oh, this is a crime, murder in the air, that's a crime. The second one, you would think that, oh, maybe they had good reasons for doing it. So that's how the media shapes perception. Let's look at another example. Actually, we are not going to look at another example. This is the end of the lesson. And if you enjoyed this lesson, please subscribe to this channel. We have more. Thank you.